So I'm now going to hand over to Roman, who's going to present to us the Tether solution and how it integrates with Hikvision. Roman, would you like to take over the screen, please?
Thank you very much for the warm introduction. I just wanted to say it's been an absolute pleasure working with Hikvision, the technical teams of Hikvision. The API is very well documented. It's quite a pleasant departure from some of the older SDKs that we have to use sometimes. So jumping straight in, I'm going to cover sort of just briefly what we do, why we do it, how to get started with Tether, and hopefully you'll find this useful. So Tether has been around for about 10 years with the ambition of bridging the IT and physical security space together. So in the IT space, we have products like YouTube, like Facebook. They're very simple, they're very visual. Even products like Ring, which are kind of on the border between IT and security. But we haven't really seen anything that brings that level of experience to the end user. So it's to have that simple app like you have with Ring, but for more the enterprise level customer, where you might have multiple sites, you might have different vendors, different systems, but you still want to have one single app instead of having multiple apps for different versions, generations, vendors of video surveillance, alarm panels, access control, or whatever else that you might be doing. So Tether is something like the missing CRM for the security industry. While it's very visual, very simple for the end user, it provides very powerful tools for us, for the engineers, for the installers, for the industry. So we've been around for a while, and our background used to actually be integrators ourselves. So going back about 10 years, we used to do installations. We no longer do that, but we really understand the challenges and the pain points that engineers face, and that's what gave birth to Tether. So in terms of why you would want to use it, we built it, first of all, for ourselves to make our lives much easier. So it's less visits to sites, it's less phone calls from the customer saying, I know we've gone through training, but I've forgotten everything. Can we do training again? It's adding additional services and additional functionality without always having to go back to site, without having to redesign the entire installation. So we built something that allows you to log in, manage everybody's accounts, manage your business in effect. So you have almost like a health check of how well you're doing. So you can see how many cameras were installed last month, how many new sites went live, which engineers are responsible for most of those sites. And one of the key important ones from here, so from the monitor, manage, maintain is the most interesting for engineers, for integrators from our conversations, because it allows you to go into any site and add additional services. If you want to have cloud backup, you can enable it on any Tether site. Cloud analytics, health monitoring. So it really turns that maintenance contract into a turnkey solution. So instead of installing some cameras, maybe getting 1 year's maintenance service, walking away, it's giving them something that creates day-to-day value that they're happy to pay for, they're happy to renew, and it's building that many years long relationship with the customer, hopefully for lifetime. For the end users, likewise, it is having that one central place that you can log in, see all of my cameras, all of my alarm panels, access control systems. Is everything working? We can even monitor network devices. If somebody unplugs a wireless access point, that can send through a push alert, that can send through a message to an alarm receiving center, and I'll cover how that works. So it's by solid, we don't just mean the reliability of Tether itself, but also knowing that every single security component out there is functioning as it should. Security is also paramount. I'll cover security in a little while, but we do have penetration tester that we frequently use to make sure that we are ahead of any security vulnerabilities. We have a security white paper. We deal with the likes of American Express, for instance, who've sent us a 100-page questionnaire to do with IT security, so we're quite familiar with that space. If you ever have a customer that asks about security, do let us know. We have quite a lot of documentation. And straightforward is we feel like a lot of the software out there is quite complex. It's designed for a trained operator, whereas we provide something that you can send a welcome email to any customer and they can get immediate value when they log in. So in terms of the system architecture, what Tether does, what it connects to, you put a Tether box on site. We also have a software-only version if you want to run it on some existing hardware. Once that Tether box, either hardware or software, is on site, it can connect to all of these different devices here at the bottom. And the reason why we have this sort of unsecure logo is it may be secure, it may be an older firmware, it may be a device that hasn't received any firmware updates for a while, it may be a device that is connecting over serial. It's very difficult to know and to guarantee that all of those devices are going to be safe to just have direct access to the internet. So what we do is we set them up to always access through the Tether box so that all communication is encrypted both in transit and at rest. So once the Tether software or Tether box is on site, you can then consume that information either by sending direct API requests to the box itself. We have local streaming, so if you do open the app, it would automatically switch and stream the data without going over internet, which is very useful in low bandwidth environments. You can use our native API, our native applications, so mobile phone, iPad, iOS, Android, or you can receive that information to an existing control room. So you might already have police response set up and you just want to add a site, we'll make that very easy. Or indeed, if you have any custom application or you're trying to build any sort of solution, you can use Tether to achieve that, and I'll show that in a live demo. So it is very much once you've connected a device into Tether, you have virtual access to it through the cloud, and you have just one single app for all of those different product categories. So the key components of Tether are these four, and they're quite distinct and different. Use cases demand either a combination of those, all of them, or could just be one of the components. So the connect piece allows you to very easily go into a legacy site, for example, put a Tether box in, and all of a sudden that legacy site will have cloud analytics and police response. So you can effectively upgrade all of those legacy cameras that they might be from 10 years ago to be cloud enabled, modern, with cloud backup, with whatever functionality you want to add, health monitoring. So that makes it very easy. It also allows you to create custom applications. So you integrate with Tether, and by using one single API, you can speak to something like 15,000 different devices in the security industry. So I'll give you an example specifically with Hikvision. So Hikvision have fantastic ANPR cameras, but if you use the TCM 403, the integration is different than if you use the other ANPR cameras in the product range. So then you have to create a server that can receive messages from that camera. It could be quite complicated. Whereas with Tether, you put a Tether box in and it's one single API. And that can also connect to the legacy cameras if the customer is not quite ready to upgrade to the newer ones from Hike, for instance. Then the second piece is having that full audit log, so you can see a list of all of the devices out there, what's working, what's not. If you decide you need to change 10,000 devices from 20 FPS to 25 FPS, you can do that. You can tunnel through to any IP or serial device. So that's as if you're standing next to it with a laptop plugged into the network. We also call it virtual port forwarding. So without actually having to do port forwarding, you can achieve the same type of result. You can see if anything changed, if anything was unplugged. It just really gives you that one central place to manage all sites, all devices, etc. The access piece is that beautiful visual app that anybody can use to log in. So that would be typically an end user. It could be a decision maker that receives a welcome email. There's a short onboarding process, and they're straight in and they can get value from their system instead of relying on having to call an ARC or having to have a trained operator or a dedicated control room. And in situations where you do have a control room, just having that flexibility of remote workers dialing in securely with two-factor authentication is also quite useful. And then finally, the services is by putting a tether box on site, all of a sudden you can add really advanced cloud-based analytics or recording to the cloud or health monitoring, or we're constantly adding extra services to it. A recent one that we've added is Deep Alert. That can do things like detect if someone's not wearing a hard hat or a high vis. And it can even detect things like if somebody's climbing a ladder and no one's supporting the ladder. So it really takes health and safety to a new level, and that can be deployed on any camera on site. So if you have your Hikvision camera that's pointing at the construction site, you tick a box in Tether, and all of a sudden it will have that advanced machine learning. So I'm going to jump into the demo. Thank you, Liam. So very quickly, the installation process is either scanning a QR code on the unit itself, or you can press activate your tether box from our website. So once you've pressed that button, you fill in the serial number. I'm not going to go through the process in the interest of time, but it's very straightforward. If you are already signed up on Tether, then it's literally just selecting, is this an existing customer or is this a new customer? And then it will ask you, where is the box going, just so we can show it in the correct place on the map. Most of the fields are optional. It's really quick. If you are not signed in, it will ask for a few more details about who you are as the integrator, but that's also quite a straightforward process. So once you've signed in, assuming that you've been using Tether for a while, you can see all of your sites on the map. You can start zooming in and out. So you can press on these bubbles to expand them. And it's color coded, so it shows you where everything's working exactly as it should, where you have units that might be offline, where you have situations where maybe a camera dropped out for a period of time. So you can see here about a month ago, this camera started saying bad auth. So that could be a situation where you can tunnel straight through to that camera and hopefully fix it without going to site. I'll show you what that looks like a little bit later on. You can also peek into the live view to have a look at what exactly is happening on that site. As I mentioned, if there were any problems, overheating, things going down, anything not working as it should, it will give you a quick little heads up directly from the map. But you can also jump straight into the site, open in a new tab, and it will show you age of hard drives, latencies, temperatures, the connection speed on site, how the network is set up. If you have a NAS or any additional hard drives on any device, it will give you a list of all of them, how old they are, if they're operating correctly, when drives are unplugged, when new ones are plugged in. It will show you when the site is connecting and disconnecting from the internet and how much internet traffic it's using. It will show you a history of firmware updates when the unit loses power. So really a lot of context as to what's happening on that site. And most of the time you don't really need to look at that context, because it will send you an integrator report saying, these are all of your sites, that's what's working, that's what's not, and hopefully gives you an idea of what you need to bring so that you're not going back and forth on site. And all of this information is available offline as well. So even if the unit is offline, we have, say, a unit here in Devon that's offline, we can still have the exact same information presented so that you are given that context, so you know exactly what went wrong and what you need to bring to site. So just to back up a little bit, sort of to get to this point, the setup process is really straightforward. So under admin, you have all of your different product categories. So you have your cameras, your network devices, your alarms. So I'll cover quickly how each of those is set up, or what we think is an ideal site. So assuming you've activated your unit, your next step is usually to set up your cameras. So you can click on cameras, and any cameras that were unboxed and plugged in. So for instance, Hikvision have a fantastic API for activating a new camera. So those types of cameras will be activated by Tether automatically. So we will give them a secure password, we will put them on a separate network, on a static IP. All of that happens automatically. We also support cameras being on a dynamic IP, where we'll detect if the IP changes. So it's designed to really be, it tries to protect you from making a mistake. It's very difficult to make a mistake with Tether. If we can't activate the camera, or if it already has a password set up, it will give you a little label to say enter password, and that's usually the only other step you need in order to get to a functional system that I'm going to show kind of how a user would use day to day. But you can start customizing it. So if we go into a camera, we can add cloud backup, for instance. So if we want to record this to the cloud, we can go into here. There's little sliders here that allow you to customize exactly how you would like the cloud backup. So it might be a customer that wants to record everything to the cloud. It might be a customer that wants to record everything locally, but just have a couple of days worth of backup. It's very flexible. You don't have to enable cloud backup at all. So you can have everything recorded locally. So it's a bit of a hybrid situation. Or you might have situations where it's a construction site and they don't really need to record video, but they just need to record time lapse. So you can still get to a very attractive price point, something that works for the customer, works for their budget, works for the connection speed on site. So we have a little calculator here that shows exactly how much data is going to be used and what average upload speed they'll need. So it's a tool that you can actually sit down with the customer and show them. You can also customize the type of markup that you as the business wants to make on these services, so that when you're sitting down with the customer, it kind of shows the price that you would invoice them. So that's how you would set up a camera. Other than the subscriptions, you can customize various things like masking, schedules. You can customize which types of analytics we're going to be pushing through for alarm response. I'll explain how that works in a second as well. But this is where you would customize which specific analytics would be sent through. So for instance, we have here people wearing hard hats. If you don't want to send that alert through, you only want to send people not wearing hard hats, then you can customize it here. In order to add a site to an ARC, you'll do this from the admin section as well. So if you press on admin, you press on my locations, which is the term that we use for sites. And then for any site that you want to add police response, for instance, you can click on the imix/sentinel integration, fill in the details that were provided by your alarm receiving center. And then all of a sudden, that alarm receiving center will receive analytics from cameras. It will receive device being unplugged events. It will receive events from your access control system, alarm panels. I'll cover those two categories next. So for alarm panels, we have a site here that integrates all the different product categories. So this is an example of a Texacom alarm panel. So with Texacom, we have full virtual keypad. We also have an integration with Hikvision AX Pro alarm panels. With them, it's much easier. You don't necessarily need a virtual keypad. It's we can do everything using the API. But the virtual keypad allows you to change more complex settings on the Texacom. But we do also have helpful little buttons here. You can trigger outputs. You can bypass the zones. This is where you also assign each zone to the nearest camera. This is how we get the visual verification done. And the setup process is you are guided through step by step. If you press alarms and then press add new alarm, and then it lets you select from the compatible alarms and tells you what to fill in and how to get started. If you ever get stuck with anything, you can press the button on the bottom right that jumps you straight into live chat. And we're very keen to help. So the next product category is access control. So with access control, we are presently only integrated with Paxton Net 2, but because of our close collaboration with Hikvision, we are adding the Hikvision phase stations and Hikvision access control next. And that will allow you to have a fully cloud-based access control system with Tether plus Hikvision. In this example, we're using Paxton Net 2, so this does require you to have a Net 2 server on site, but we are backing up the entire database to the cloud so that you have all of your users, all of your access control units, the mapping to what's the nearest camera. You can specify if you want Tether to ignore touch out events. If you have an exit button that you just don't care to log those events, you can do it here. And you can also remotely open close doors. So if somebody needs access, you can just open your app, press a button, all of a sudden the door is unlocked. You can also add and remove users directly from Tether. So instead of having to team viewer into one Paxton instance, then team viewer into the next one, if you have multiple sites, you have one single place where you enter the details, press save, and that gets pushed through to the relevant Net2 instances. So this lets you fully manage your Paxton system in the cloud. And if somebody steals the Paxton server, you can push the users out to a brand new server, so you're back up and running in sort of hours instead of days or potentially weeks. So that's how you would set up the access control system. So we've covered setting up cameras, setting up alarms, access control, adding subscriptions, adding police response. Once the system is commissioned, you would then create a user. So if you press on settings users, you create a user which allows you to customize which sites they can see. Can they see access control information? Can they see license plate information? Can they see? Can they issue audio challenges? So all of that can be controlled here. So you can really fine-grained control over permissions for each user. And then the user gets a welcome email with a short onboarding guide that lets them be up and running in a matter of minutes. So once this is done, the end user will be given an option to turn off support access, which is, that happens at handover, but that doesn't mean that you as the integrator will lose access. You can still see all the high level information, what's working, what's not. I'll show you what that can look like. But you do have quite a lot of information that you can still access. And if the end user turns on support access, you get a push notification that they've turned on access, and then you'll be able to see the cameras, make changes, but you can still see how the cameras are set up. Are they working? You just won't be able to see the recordings and change. So this is an example of a integrated dashboard. So just by scrolling through, it tells you how much that customer. So this is some sample data, but it gives you an idea of what to expect. So it shows how much the customer is being invoiced for additional services, who's logging in, how they're using the platform, how many cameras are being added month to month, how many units are being added month to month. It will show a breakdown by engineer to show which engineer is installing how many systems. So it gives you a bit of a health check for the business. So you can log in and see, this is what we've sold this month, this is what we sold last month, this is what we sold last year in comparison, how we're making progress, how we're doing as a business. One sort of final thing in terms of setup is this is something we've added very recently. You can literally select any network device. So for instance, say you have a Dell laptop that is not supposed to be taken off site. You can go into here, flick that monitor to on, and all of a sudden, if anybody touches that laptop, there will be a push alert sent through, and potentially even to a control room. You can also specify the nearest camera to that device, and if you do that, then not only will you get a push alert, you will also get visual verification showing the person unplugging the laptop, so you know exactly who did it. So we have a school recently that's using this to monitor wireless access points, so we can also pick up health information from SNMP, so we know if signals drop, we know if something's not working as it should, as well as if somebody physically unplugs the unit, and in all of those cases we send through an alert to the relevant person. So this is all great for the integrator, but in terms of kind of day-to-day use for the end user, I'll give you an example of something that is quite difficult to achieve with other systems on the market. So for instance, you have multiple sites and you want to see, is anybody going there at a time they're not supposed to? So with a typical system, you'd have to dial in to one site potentially, then select a specific day, a specific time range, then select the previous day. You get the point. Then you have to dial into the next site. So that could be hours, days, weeks, depending on the connection speed on site. You might have to go there to extract footage. So with Tether, it's a bit of a party trick. So you can click on, I want to see events, say in the evening. They don't really access at night, so there's no point filtering for that. And then you want to see if somebody actually accessed the building, so with the access control. So just by scrolling through this list, so we've now reviewed 2 days worth of events, then 3 days worth of events. So within seconds, we can see a week's worth of events across multiple sites, filtering specifically by, somebody accessed the building when they're not supposed to. And then from here, you can jump straight in, have a look at. So another thing that we can do is we can show you a preview of what's inside of the video. And each of those images are what we call best image technology. So it's not just a frame every 5 seconds, it is a best frame, so that if somebody sprints past the camera, we'll show them front and center with a red box around them, so you can really trust this to review the contents of a video. So just scrolling through, you know who entered, how long they were there, what they were doing, and then if you want to play the full 4K or whatever camera you happen to have there, here they have a Hikvision 4K camera, so you can see the images is very good. So you can see exactly what was going on during that event. And if you wanted to share that event, you can, with a single tap, press share this event, and you can either copy a link. So we have a link here that you can that you can copy paste into WhatsApp or wherever you need to share it, or you can send it by email. So for instance, dear Mr. Policeman, here's the evidence you wanted, and if for any reason you need to stop sharing that event, you can press unshare, and then that link will no longer work. So very similar to Google Drive, Dropbox, we try to bring that level of experience for physical security. When the person logs in, they'll see the recordings, the time lapse, they'll see the access control event, so they'll know which person entered, everything that was going on through the access control system. So that's very useful, and you can add any other attachments, any other background information you want the person to have. So instead of going to site, extracting footage with USB sticks, selecting a from and to time, Tether generates all these events for you, and it's a very straightforward user experience. We also have dark mode, and a lot of people prefer to use that, especially when working in the evenings. It's less jarring. So again, bringing all of the modern comforts to typical kind of day-to-day physical security. We also have detailed audit logs. We have ANPI, as I've mentioned. I won't go into that, but I'll open a couple more tabs. This specific site is quite interesting because what we've done here is we've built an interface for managing storage units, and this is something that was built custom for this company, Storebox. So we're working very, very closely with them. So if you have a specific business requirement, some customization that needs to happen, we can also do that as well. But here they have diagrams of occupancy. They can onboard a customer very easily. So they just select what storage units that customer should have access to, what is their vehicle registration, so we can open the gate. And Tether will automate the interaction between all the different components. So they have a Texacom alarm panel connected to each storage unit. They have Paxton access control to enter the building, and they have Hikvision for all of the video verification. So when they're setting up a storage unit, they can specify size, floors, all of the metadata, but they also specify which access control system it's connected to, and which alarm panel is connected to, and what specific zone we need to bypass. So when a person enters the building, we take a snapshot of them, send that to the owner of the storage unit to say this person is now accessing your storage unit. We disarm the storage unit, we unlock the door for them, and all of that interaction happens automatically, so that the operator just gets a very simple dialogue of I want to add a new customer, and all of the complexity is just handled by Tether. So you can create these complex interactions between different systems. For access control, you also have other comforts, counting how many people you have. You can filter by specific things. You can search by names. You can search by site. You can search by door. So all of that is available directly from within Tether as well. We automatically add the visual verification, and that's set up the same way as you select a camera for alarm zones. You do the exact same thing for an access control system. Wrong button. So if you go under access control units, you just select the nearest camera to that access control unit, and then we know how to create the visual verification. So very straightforward. There's also a detailed audit log, so you can literally see minute by minute who's doing what they're accessing. So you can see here that actually this was 3 minutes ago, somebody viewed these specific events. So you literally minute by minute who's watching what, how long they're watching live view, which cameras they're watching on live view, and all of this information can also be exported as an Excel. So in case you need to generate an audit report for, we have a customer now, a housing association, they want to get an audit report for the past year of everything that's working, everything that's not, who's accessed, how many times they've accessed, where from. So they can go into here, start exporting this as an Excel and doing whatever it is that they need to do with that information. So everything that I'm showing here can be exported as an Excel. So from the customer's perspective, they can let people in, they can disarm alarms, they can find footage, share footage. It's very simple to use. Everything is audit logged, everything is PCI compliant, GDPR compliant. So that works really well for them. They can also have this in real-time view, so that, or this is more of the operator view. So if they are setting up specific analytics, they can be notified anytime those analytics happen in real time, and they can tick off those events. So that allows them to use this in more of a control room setting. So very modern, very, very simple to use interface. Of course, things like live view, you can issue two-way, so there's two-way audio. You can issue audio challenges to somebody on site. You can see here what that looks like in real time. So we also highlight the object of interest. So everything you would expect, and in a package that's really simple to use. For integrators, we also get additional documentation, so things like accessing pricing, accessing marketing data sheets, everything else is directly from within the platform. And if you ever can't find anything, as I mentioned, there is that live chat in the bottom right. So with that said, I'm going to jump back into the presentation and just cover off a couple more slides. So this is what it looks like in terms of product range. So we have 3 types of units. We have a very small unit that we have customers using on size of buildings, on solar applications, or in vehicles. Very low power. So I think it's something 2.5 watts of power that it requires. So very nice unit to use in those types of applications. Then we have the probably the most popular units, which allows you to quickly connect and record 10 cameras to the cloud. And with Tether, we do have this concept of monitor and record. So if you are recording cameras with Tether, generating the events, the time lapse, potentially recording to the cloud, then it's limited to 10 cameras. But you can still monitor the health of 100 cameras on site, and you can also see live view of those cameras. So you can add a tether box to site. All of a sudden 10 cameras are recording either locally or to the cloud, and then all the other ones are still visible for live view, and that's an opportunity for the customer to decide if they want to add additional ones in the future. And then we have a rack mount unit, which we have a standard one, and we can also custom build them up to 150 cameras. And as I mentioned, if you do have your own hardware, do check with us. We have minimum specs that you can refer to, and then you don't even necessarily need to buy any hardware from us. You can just download the piece of software. But if you are buying hardware, then Mayflex is presently our distributor in the UK. So do get in touch with them. In terms of what we're doing with Hikvision specifically, so we've integrated with most of Hikvision's product range, including Hik Pro Connect. So all of the devices that you happen to have in Hik Pro Connect, you can actually also see them directly within Tether. So that's quite neat. And Hikvision is by far the most, the single most popular manufacturer that's being used with Tether. So 48% of all devices that are being monitored by Tether are manufactured by Hikvision. So that gives you an idea why we're working quite closely. So you can see here that you're not limited to just cameras. You can use, for instance, the new AX Pro alarm panels from Hik. You can manage them side by side, similarly as how I showed with Texacom, but it's even easier because you can perform all functionality without having to use a keypad. You can use recorders as well if the recorders support any analytics, we can pull that analytics through and make it searchable and accessible from within Tether. But by putting a Tether box on site, you can then take your existing and legacy sites, whatever that might be. So you might have Texacom panels on the Paxton access control system. You might have some older Pelco devices, whatever it might be. And all of a sudden, they will work nicely with Hikvision. You'll have access to them in the cloud. You can add advanced cloud analytics to those devices. So it gives you a lot of flexibility with what you can do. So it can become quite complicated behind the scenes, but the user still gets a very streamlined, very straightforward user experience. And we are compatible with Image Sentinel, Hike Central connected. And as I mentioned, we have an API so that you can feed information into Tether, get information out in a very streamlined way. And we even have little snippets of code that you can copy paste. So if you have your own product that you're building or your website, you can copy paste a bit of code to then add live view of that camera to your website or to your product to add that visual verification. So that's very useful as well. We have a partner program. Do get in touch with us for more details, but depending on various thresholds, partners get quite a significant discount. Mayflex also have all of this information, so either speak to us or speak to Mayflex. And just as a summary, Tether works on anything, Mac, Windows, native apps for various platforms. Really easy to get started with. Installation is really straightforward, but you can also do very complicated things with it. And with that said, well, excuse me. With that said, thank you very much for listening to me. These are our contact details if you would like more information, and I'm going to pass it back to Liam.
Great, thank you, Roman. That was very interesting, very informative, and I think every time I see the presentation, I learn something new, and some big brands on there as well.